02167. We're going to follow up on this case. I promise. Good luck to all of you. Thank you very much for having the courage to be with us today, and thank you folks at home for watching. Bye-bye.
This is Chicago's Midday News.
Good afternoon. I'm Robert Jordan for Steve Sanders. And coming up on the Midday News, Congress, in a rush to shut down for Thanksgiving, passes major transportation, anti-crime, and savings and loan legislation. Pressure is being put on the City Council to reject the city's new pact with Commonwealth Edison. And we'll have the first of two special reports on surgery for children born with facial defects. Those stories just ahead, but first, let's find out from Tom Skilling what's ahead for Thanksgiving and the weather.
Bob, fortunately, that snow last night went to the north of us through Wisconsin and Michigan, so we missed that. That's good news for travelers who now look for mild weather with maybe some fog patches later tonight and some scattered rains the next few days. Still looking at a big cool-off this weekend and next week. We have new numbers on that. We'll pass them along later on, but it's time for the news now, and here's Bob.
Okay, Tom, thank you. In Washington at this hour, Congress is racing against the holiday clock, trying to process a pile of legislation before adjourning for Thanksgiving. The lawmakers are battling bills back and forth between the House and the Senate, trying to pass what are known as the must bills, those pieces of legislation that must be acted on before year's end. Candy Crowley is on Capitol Hill and filed this late report.
Right now, both the House and the Senate are in session trying to get some of this key legislation passed, legislation that was considered key before they leave town. The Senate is right now looking at the surface transportation bill. That is expected to pass in the Senate as easily as it did in the House. The measure will provide billions of dollars to upgrade the nation's highways and transit systems, and more importantly, supporters believe all that construction could add up to 4 million jobs for the economy over the next several years. On the House side, having spent the night working, lawmakers are within an hour or so of recess. Since dawn, they've made relatively quick work of several bills, including two key banking measures necessary to maintain stability in the industry. The first will provide $70 billion in funds to refinance the FDIC. That's the agency which guarantees bank deposits. That measure has been passed. Expected to be passed shortly, a second measure to pump another $80 billion into the agency, which is overseeing the S&L bailout. In a bit of a surprise, the House has also passed the crime bill, once thought comatose if not dead. That measure includes a 5-day waiting period for handgun purchases, allows the death penalty for an additional 50 crimes, and provides more money for state and local law enforcement activities. It will not include a ban on semi-automatic weapons as originally envisioned in the House version.
We should attach a tax credit provision to this bill so every American citizen could go out and buy a flak jacket, because this bill declares open season.
If the president really wants a crime bill, instead of just talking about it, he can pick up the phone, ask the troops over here and in the other body to get with the program, then pick up his pen a little later and sign a comprehensive anti-crime measure. If the president fails to do this, the burden is on him to tell the American people just why he's against putting cops back on the beat.
The president has threatened to veto that crime bill, but it has to get to him first, and prospects for passage in the Senate is a little bit questionable since Senate Republicans have threatened to filibuster repeatedly. After this is all done, the Congress will, of course, take off for Thanksgiving. However, work will not be done because next week the House Ways and Means Committee will come back in. Democrats felt they had to do this because they felt the president forced them into staying here and trying to deal with some economic packages by somehow hinting that perhaps the Democrats weren't interested in getting the economy growing again.
That was Candy Crowley on Capitol Hill. The bill, a new transportation bill passed by the Congress last night, includes more than $4 billion for highway projects in Illinois. That action means that the Kennedy Expressway reconstruction work can go full steam ahead. Rick Rosenthal has more.
The giant Kennedy Expressway reconstruction project will be one immediate beneficiary of the legislation. The Kennedy project will cost a total of $450 million. State funds will pay half, but officials needed the other half to come from the federal government. That $225 million is in the transportation bill and will keep the Kennedy project on time.
we're right on schedule. We're right on schedule. This past year, you've noticed construction on the Kennedy, and that's been the advance work, the work to get ready for the major work that we want to do this next summer, which is the complete reconstruction of the express lanes.
The Kennedy project will be the biggest effort of its kind in history and will involve the complete reconstruction of over 7 miles of road from the Ryan Expressway on the south to the Edens Junction on the north. The project will take the next 3 summers. In 1992, crews will completely overhaul the express lanes. In 93, they'll rebuild the inbound lanes, and in the summer of 94, they'll rebuild the outbound lanes. The Kennedy has a total of 10 lanes. Only 2 will be under construction at any given time. 4 lanes will remain open in each direction during construction. But it all depends on the federal money in the transportation bill. Without that, officials say, the Kennedy project will have no good options.
Our only options are either to delay it or to cancel other projects, needed projects in the area to finance it.
For WGN News, I'm Rick Rosenthal.
The bill contains $260 million for the proposed $800 million downtown trolley system. That measure still needs Senate approval. Reports involving the pocketbook could well influence voters in the election year of 1992. President Bush knows that, of course, but there is some concern, even among some Republicans now, that he doesn't know what to do about the sluggish economy and plummeting polls. John Aubuchon reports.
Judging or getting on.
George Bush and his top team are starting to look like the gang that couldn't shoot straight. Mistake after costly mistake.
There's some truth to that.
Even friends like Reagan-Bush campaign veteran Lynn Nofziger admit President Bush is in trouble.
He had a great lead, and he has kicked it away. And
kicked it so far that one prominent poll now shows fewer than half of all Americans now believe Mr. Bush will be reelected. The disarray in the White House speaks for itself. Item: as Democrats hit him for spending too much time on foreign policy, not enough on America's own troubles, the president abruptly canceled a Far East trip. There was a smell of panic, and he then rescheduled the trip. Item: struggling with the economy, he hit the banks.
I'd frankly like to see the credit card rates down.
Republican Senator D'Amato took him at his word and proposed a rate cap, and the stock market took a nosedive. The stories said Bush Chief of Staff John Sununu engineered the credit card remarks, but then, violating a cardinal rule of politics, Sununu blamed the president. Mr. Bush ad-libbed that, he said. Item: Housing Secretary Jack Kemp, darling of the conservatives, has publicly called on the White House to change course and propose tax cuts to rescue the economy right away. The open rebellion reflects deep divisions in the Bush team over how to handle his worst problem.
The single largest reason that the White House is in disarray is the economy continues to deteriorate, and they're not responding to it.
Some critics, even Republicans, say throwing John Sununu overboard would help.
John Sununu has become a very strong chief of staff who clearly does make a lot of decisions and is in charge of making sure the White House runs efficiently. But let's face it, with George Bush, the buck really does stop in the Oval Office.
Still, there are stories that the acerbic Sununu has lost even Barbara Bush's confidence and won't last the year. And some believe the house cleaning now would help Mr. Bush in the long run. But in the long run, it's really the economy that counts. As one top Bush aide told the New York Times last week, if the economy comes back in 6 months, nothing else matters. And if it does not, nothing else matters. In Washington, John Aubuchon, WGN News.
A new poll shows Mr. Bush's approval rating at 51%, down 16 points from a month ago. Only 25% of those polled said they approve of the way he's handling the economy. Israel's deputy foreign minister says the Jewish state is seeking a 5-day postponement on the December 4th round of peace talks in Washington, citing a need to organize. Palestinians are denouncing the move. A week before the 50th anniversary of the bombing of Pearl Harbor, the Japanese parliament erupted into a brawl over a bill that would expand its military role. A parliament committee debated the bill that would allow Japanese troops to serve in United Nations peacekeeping forces. Japan's constitution forbids the use of forces overseas, and the deeply emotional issue sparked a brawl among lawmakers. Some fear a resurgence of the kind of militarism that led the nation into World War II. The committee finally